Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on another Okuma reel. This is an Okuma with a level line reel. It's the Classic CLX. It's a saltwater fishing reel that is designed for inshore and some rather large fish. This can take anywhere from 15 to 25 pounds of monofilament line. It has a high capacity, about 300 up to 500 depending on what line you're using, and overall it's got a rugged level line system that will enable you to fight larger fish. A lot of times some folks will use line guides that are weaker, designed probably for fresh water, and well, they tend to break or tear or the like. Well, we're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. And we're going to start by taking out the screw that holds the cap, that holds the handle nut on. And as I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. My channel is about fishing. It's about giving fishing reels a second chance, get them tuned up and ready to go. And it's also about a little bit of education, but mostly teaching you how to do it yourself so that you can keep your reels working for years to come. Well, we just removed the handle nut, and now we can remove the handle. Just walk it up. If you're having trouble with that, use the star adjuster behind it to push it up. It's a kind of a secret little trick there, but it works. That's what's important. Well, at this point, I want to tell you to take pictures before you get too far down the road in taking all the pieces and parts off. If you don't, you may get stuck. If you get stuck, I may wind up with a reel in a bag project. There's a lot of folks that trust their memory. Well, I've learned a long time ago not to trust mine. So I always take pictures. I'm taking videos now. But if you don't have to do a video. But when you get to a critical juncture, take a picture. It's going to remind you how those pieces and parts went on. For example, there's a little collar here that sticks out. That goes on the inside. And then there's a white bushing here. Well, I can't get it out right now, but when we remove the bridge later, we'll be able to do that. And that's important to notice the orientation and where it belongs. Well, to remove this side plate, which is the important one to do, it's where all the work happens, we're going to remove those 4 Phillips head screws. Always match your screwdriver to the threads or the slots in the reel. And when you're doing something like this, take the screws and place them on your bench or somewhere else so that you can note if they're all the same size. This one I think has them, but you'll never know unless you do this. And if you notice one that's too long or too short, make sure to note where the longer or the shorter screw went. Okuma does a good job of keeping them all the same, but I just worked on a Penn Fierce reel where it had a different one, and a lot of the Shimanos have different ones, as do the Daiwas, so just pay attention to that. Once I do that, well, all the parts, if you're wondering where they go into a parts tray. It's a fast food container, and that holds those parts for me. With those 4 screws removed, we should be able to pull this right out, and well, you can see the inside set here. We have our spool. Let's go ahead and remove the spool. We have some tape on there holding the line. That's nice. The back end doesn't have much there, so you don't need to do much there. You have a bushing in the back here. That's just a solid piece of metal. It's usually brass and the like. And we're going to just clean that off. We have 2 plastic gears. We have a plastic and a metal gear here. So we're just going to put a little bit of oil where they meet. That's driving your line guide here. And while I have this open, we're going to remove the pawl cover for the line guide, and then we'll remove the pawl, and we'll make sure that that gets cleaned and serviced as well. Well, if you have any questions on reel repair, whether it's on this reel or not, if you leave those questions in the comment section to this video, I will try to answer them for you. That's the best way to reach me. I get those questions all the time. What's the best way to reach you? Calling, well, calling is kind of hit or miss. There is a phone number on the business card that follows. However, if I'm doing a video like this, if I'm in my shop working on a reel, or any of the other activities that might consume my day, well, calling is not going to be a good way. However, when you leave questions in the comments section, most mornings before I enter the shop, I do try to answer those for you. That cylinder has a fork on it. Make sure that the 2 points on the fork are the same. You saw me cleaning out the shoulders, which are at the base. Then you can reinstall. Put a drop of oil into that cavity and also oil the worm gear. Now this one's clean. If you found that the worm gear had a lot of grease on it, then what you want to do is take a paper towel and run it over it, and then, as you saw me rotating it before, rotate that worm gear so that it turns, keeping the paper towel pretty much steady, like this. And we're not seated on that pole yet. Now we're seated. Okay. And I just noticed as I did that I knocked this arm out here, so pay attention. That arm belongs in that little cavity there. Now if you had a lot of dirt and grease and debris and all kinds of other stuff, pull this side plate off, but that wasn't needed here. There's nothing interfering. Get some fishing reel grease and load it into that cavity on your bushing. And yeah, if you wanted to hot rod this reel, you could take that bushing out and find the same matched bearing for it, and you'd be good to go. Alright, here's the business end of the reel. We're going to see if we can pull this whole thing off by taking the 3 side plate screws out. This one is always annoying to me. I don't like the setup of the Okumas for this, because on the reinstall going in, you kind of have to remove that anyway to get the anti-reverse dog set correctly. Let's see what we can do. Again, same idea. Take the 3 screws out. I'm going to remove that other screw. I think that best to do that right now. Notice that this one is different. It's got a washer, or at least a washer head on it. I noticed as I tried to turn that screw that the assembly started to move. Well, we're off now, so that's fine. I'm going to take it off anyway. I'm using the handle as a wrench to hold the other side of the sleeve or shaft in place so that I can remove this. Alright, so 3 screws and a long screw. There's a washer under there. And I believe that this one has there's usually a flat side on one of them, maybe not this one. Alright, here's the inside. So if you're working on this now, you have 2 washers on the inside that are going to go on that. I'm going to put that into my tray. Take my 3 screws that belong there, put that into the tray. And you can see that this reel got disrupted with the removal. So if you don't know this reel, one of the things you want to do is go ahead and get a schematic for it so that you know where to put the parts after you service them. First thing off is this jack. It's held in place by a small screw up top. There's a little washer underneath it. Get the screw and the washer out. The jack comes off. There's 2 sides to it. There's a bump side and a flat side. Flat side is going to face out. Take these and put those in the parts tray for safekeeping. Next up we have our yoke and our pinion gear, or sometimes called a spool gear. We have 2 springs. Those are the yoke springs. They go underneath the yoke in this assembly. We have our main gear, and we have our anti-reverse dog. Usually what I will try to do is just leave the anti-reverse dog in the case. We'll show you how to reinstall that in a little bit. I'm going to remove the handle, which I was using for leverage. Push the main gear out. And there's that plastic bushing on the inside. Well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to clean all of that out so that we can get the old grease out of the case. I'm going to use a series of the paper towel. There's not much grease in this reel, but whatever it is you want to clean out. And then we're going to check our main gear and assembly. Now I didn't put the yoke and the pinion gear into my parts tray, so let's go do that. And let's go for your gear assembly. Underneath that piece there's a tension washer and a flat washer. And there's a series of drag washers. And then underneath the main gear there is a Teflon washer. Make sure that it's clean. Again, I think the issue with this one probably is that all of the grease has evaporated. Make sure that the teeth are clean and that they're uniform, and if there's no splits or cracks or otherwise. Check it this way for the points. Check it this way for the lines or the gear teeth themselves. Once you've done that, get some fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease for this. Yeah, Quantum makes the hot sauce and Shimano makes their greases. Doesn't matter to me which ones you use. Just use fishing reel grease. With that all greased up, we're going to install that back on. Now we have a series of these. These are Carbon Tex washers. You do not need to do anything with them other than make sure that they're clean. If you notice that they're losing their crosshatch, the first thing that you want to do is pull through it with a bristle brush. Usually that's dried grease that's holding that in place, and well, that will just clean it up. When you can see the cross hatchings on the washer, that's going to be fine. There's 3 different washers here now on the metal side. There's a thinner keyed washer, there's an eared washer which has the 2 points on it, and there's a thicker cap washer. The one with the big hole goes inside first. The thin keyed washer, that's the one without the points, goes in next. Then it doesn't matter which of the 2. And again, these are Carbon Tex and these are in good condition. They're clean. You don't need to do anything there. Next up is the one with the points face down. The last of the washers, the cap washer. Now we have the flat washer and the little tension washer. So that's the way it came out. What I like to do with this reel is I like to set this gear in place and lock it in with the star adjuster, because this one floats, and when you go to put the anti-reverse on, it's a little bit more difficult. This is the collar that's going to go inside that plastic bushing, and we're going to put the whole assembly in right now, just like that. And I'm going to steady that with the star adjuster. Now you need a little bit of movement in and out, but not a lot. To set your anti-reverse dog, I've left the spring on, but if yours popped off, the spring goes on this shaft right here. That's your spring. And the bottom end of it goes over that stud on this side. That is your anti-reverse dog setup. It can only be done with the cap off or the cover plate off. Here's your cover plate. I'm not going to put that back on at the moment, but we did say there was a washer there. Let's go ahead and put that on. The other one looks like it's just a brass inset to that, so let's get that washer on there. Next up then, we want to deal with the 2 springs for the yoke. Those go over the broad posts. I'm going to lay this down for a moment. I'll probably knock the anti-reverse off about 7 or 8 times. Just one of the things with this reel. Check the teeth on the pinion gear. These are all clean, again devoid of grease. Check the shoulders on your yoke. Go to your grease brush. Get rid of a good coat of grease there as well, just like we did with the main gear. You don't have to get grease in every tooth. That's going to spread when it rotates. But get enough in there. What's enough? Well, that's kind of defined in the negative by what's too much. Too much is where it just gets sloppy and it's just going to shed because it's going to overload the piece. You have 2 sides to this. You have a side that will accept the spool. You have a side that's going to drive the gear. The slot faces out. Coming back to this then. as I mentioned, this more times than not takes a moment or 2 or 10 to get that dog set properly. This is the orientation. The open side of the yoke faces down. Sit that in and over the 2 posts. Then take the next piece, which is the jack. I have a little bit of grease here, so that looks like that's probably where that spun from. I also have a little washer there. The jack, while holding that yoke down, the jack goes on each side of the yoke, and on the top, that slot seats inside the post. That washer goes on. And this is always a little bit of a fun exercise. I want to find my micro driver. And start that and put that on just like that. Well, we're coming down to the point where it's almost done. But again, one of the issues here is that anti-reverse dog. So make sure that that anti-reverse dog does not slide behind the click ratchet and the main gear. And as I mentioned, that's why I put this on. We'll come and take it off in a moment, but that's why I put it on at this point. We have our case that goes on next. Center that over the axle shaft. Make sure that it sits nice and flush in all of them. First one I want to put in is the one that holds the gear to that. That's because I don't want to break that set for that anti-reverse dog. There's a washer underneath. Pay attention to that. And get your Phillips head screwdriver and tighten that one down. These are nice reels. They're very dependable reels. This little setup here is always kind of annoying to me, but it is what it is in the design. And it can be serviced. It's not like it's impossible. There's a couple of reels that I've worked on that are head scratchers as to why they would design them, because your takeaway on those reels is that they were probably never designed to be serviced. I have one in mind. It's a lever drag reel. It has 3 or 4 different types of screws on the front end of it to disassemble. I've never understood why having somebody doing the assembly use 3 or 4 different tools for 7 screws makes any kind of operational efficiency, but then again, I'm not a real designer. All right, at this point we can turn it, make sure that everything is working fine, which it is. Let's go ahead and get that spool. Make sure that your shafts are clean on that. I'm unsure as to whether we have a burring in this spool. I don't think, no, we don't. So there's no sense removing that because that spool shaft is not turning. And you can put a little bit of grease onto the part that's going to drive the idler gear and put grease onto the shaft, which is going to seat into that bushing on the back end. Let's go ahead and put the spool back in. I'm going to take a rag here because I didn't wipe that down before. Get the old grease off. Out with the old, in with the new. Nice little grease onto the shaft there. Line it up, set the case, hold the case. Go to your parts tray and get the 4 screws. So relatively easy to assemble if you remember about holding that main gear in place. The first time I worked on one of these reels, which goes back several years now, I was basically beside myself because I kept trapping that anti-reverse dog when I went to reinstall. And then I realized if I can have the reel hold it for me, then we're okay. All right, well, coming down to the end of this, let's recap what we've done. We've taken the reel off, we've taken pictures, we've noted the orientation of the pieces and parts that go with this. We've had the opportunity to assess the damage, if there was any damage in this, and to clean them all up, put them all back together again. There was a little tension washer that goes behind the handle. It was hiding on the back of the handle when we took it off. You want to put that on between your star adjuster and the handle. Take our handle nut now. I like to start these by hand. The reason for that is if you cross strip this, you're going to have trouble. Before I tighten that down, I want to tighten the star adjuster down. Remember, we left some play in there so that we could move that in and out to accommodate that anti-reverse. Now that that's out of the way, you can finish the tightening of that. And usually, if you can get the point on that nut pointing to the hole, then the hold down cap will fit perfectly, and well, it does in this one. If you're off a quarter of a rotation, if you can get the flat side of the nut to look perpendicular to it, that will also work. All right, everything's in. We're going to take a little scrubby pad here just to clean this reel up. I'm using a rod and reel cleaner for that. It's Penn's rod and reel cleaner. The reel doesn't mind that it's a Penn product, even though it's an Okuma reel. Just take care of it. You've taken the opportunity or the time to service it. You might as well go ahead and just take a moment to clean it up before you reinstall it on your rod. Buff it out with a paper towel. And while I'm doing this, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel, everything that they've been doing to keep us safe. Truly appreciate your efforts and what you do. All right, let's give it a try then. First thing I want to do is I want to move this to the off position, make sure that my spool spins. Well, you can notice it's a little bit tighter than when we started. Why is that? We added grease to both sides. So come over to your spool adjuster, loosen it up a little bit. And now the spool adjuster can be used to tighten or loosen depending on how you want to do that. Well, we have a nice free spool running one here. Understand that as that grease wears off on both sides, you might want to tighten that. If you want to cast a little bit further, loosen it up. If you want to, you're doing drop fishing, you want to minimize your backlash, you might want to tighten it up a little bit. That's spinning fine. Let's put it back into gear and let's give it a ride. Wow, that makes a big difference in how it was performing before I started this. And you can hear our anti-reverse clicking away there. And no, there is not a way to silence that. That's the way that this one runs. I'm also curious on this one. Some of the earlier Okumas had an automatic trip. When you went into free spool, if you turned your handle, it would trip. It appears that this one does not have that feature on it. That's okay. All right, so that's it. That's your Okuma Classic CLX level wind fishing reel. That's how to take it apart, service it, and get it ready to go fishing again. I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I wish everybody a great day, great fishing, and success in servicing the reels yourself. Again, if you have any questions, maybe you're stuck on a reel, just leave it in the comment section. I will try to answer those for you. In the meantime, have a great day. It's time to go fishing.